Hey friends, welcome to episode 556 of the My 123 Cents podcast. I am Kevin Huntsberger, your host, joined once again by Chad Smart, who, as we are recording on Sunday morning, July 13th, pardon me, I think if there was ever the phrase wrestling hangover, it would apply to you today. Is that right, Chad?
Eh, that's a good observation. It was a long night or day yesterday.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I can multitask in some regards. So I got to cram 4 hours into 6 hours into 3 hours, let's say.
Okay. Well, last week we kind of posed the question, will July 12th go down as a day that lives in wrestling infamy? I'll be honest, I watched only Saturday night's main event. I did see highlights and clips of All In, like a lot of those clips, actually through my social media feeds. I didn't really see a whole lot on NXT Great American Bash, a few things. Um, is July 12th, 2025, a day that lives in wrestling infamy in your view?
I don't think so. I think, like you said, the NXT show, which I did watch on a second screen while I was watching All In. So I wasn't giving it full attention, but from what I saw, and we've talked about it before on the show that I don't have the CW, so I don't watch NXT on the regular. It looked like it was a fine, acceptable show, but I don't think it's a show anybody's going to be talking about, after July 13th or after this week, when all the other YouTube wrestling personalities do their recap shows. And then All In, I think people will be talking about for a lot of positives, but also just for the sheer length of the show. And Saturday night's main event, I think there were two major events that came out of that. Those being Goldberg's last match, which went way longer than I expected it to, and Seth Rollins' injury, depending on how serious it is.
And we're going to again, I'm talking about this every time. I try to stay nostalgic and talk about past and not because we're kind of in a vacuum when we talk
Mm.
about things that are happening. But I guess 5 years from now, if somebody stumbles across this, it will be nostalgic. But we are going to focus on this past weekend of pro wrestling. Obviously, we're recording ahead of Evolution, so probably won't have a whole lot going on with that. But I want to get your thoughts, Chad, on a couple of
Mm-hmm.
things. We talk about wrestling infamy, and I think of big wrestling events and things that kind of change, maybe either changed the business or changed the direction of a company. The whole mega power storyline back in the late 80s, the creation, the formation of the NWO and WCW, um, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Austin 316 line, those are all things that to me as a fan, if somebody says what are some things that changed the trajectory of the business or that were infamous or infamy
Mm.
related, those are the things that I kind of go to. And the commonality of all three of those things is they were all, some of them were pre-internet and others were definitely pre-social media. And it's been
Yeah.
discussed before. I think we've even discussed it, but social media, and I know your opinion on social media in general, but as from a wrestling fan's perspective, it's like this constant new event coming in and taking over and we stop, we talk about it for a second and then we move on to the next thing. There's no time
Mm.
for anything to linger. Mick Foley has famously said if social media had been around during Hell in a Cell 1998, it would have been talked about for a few hours and then glossed over and moved on to the next thing.
Mm.
Is that just a product of our attention spans these days? Because it's very interesting too. And I'm throwing a lot at you, but we have shorter attention span. I know I do, and yet the pay-per-views and not necessarily the PLEs anymore, but the pay-per-views get longer and longer. It seems.
I'm sorry, what were you talking? You say something? Um,
Nick.
yeah. uh, that's interesting that yes, I definitely think our attention spans are shorter. But I hadn't compared that to the shows getting longer. And, you know, I mean, I'm going to try to, there's a lot, like you said, a lot here to talk about. So I'm going to probably tangent a bit and take the scenic route to an answer. But I think you know, if you're talking, and I'm going to use just WWE and AEW as the two major
Sure.
promotions. WWE has shorter shows, but they come with a subscription price. So, a 2 hour show for $10 a month with everything else you get on Peacock, um, or Netflix, I guess, if you're international, that you're usually getting your money's worth. AEW will go longer, but you're paying for the show. And I would rather, if I'm going to pay, $50 American for the AEW show, I want to get my money's worth, which for the most part I always think I do with AEW, um, but at least they're not trying to come in at 2 hours, 2.5 hours. They're giving you the stuff, the a lot of action, sometimes too much, because again, there's not a lot of room for things to breathe. Um, you know, uh, you know, uh, Using this year's All In as an example, Adam Cole comes out, gives what may be a retirement speech, and then you're right into the next match. Um, or somebody wins a title, you go right to the next match, and um, so I do think that we there's always got to be something new. There's always got to be something, because I think also with social media as a factor, it's like everyone talk you and I can have a conversation for, let's say, an hour, as we're going to do usually on these shows, and then with the one-on-one conversation, you have longer time to discuss things. I hope I'm getting to a point here, and this will make sense. With social media, you have hundreds, thousands of people commenting at once, and so the amount of information that you're taking in will seem longer. Basically, you're getting more information in a short amount of time, and so then you can move on to something else. And I guess your mind thinks that you've spent enough time on something given the amount of information you've taken in. Does that make any sense at all? Again, I was up till 1 in the morning watching
Sure.
wrestling. So,
Well, let me ask you this because we've
yeah.
talked before when we do the movie mania episodes, which
Mm,
I want to jump back into those in the near future as well.
I know
We
we still
talked
have
about kind
Marine
of that.
2 through 27 to do.
What's that?
I said we still have Marine 2 through 27 to get through.
Exactly. We've talked about kind of that sweet spot movie length as being right around 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, what is the sweet spot for a wrestling pay-per-view or PLE? For all intents and purposes, we'll say pay-per-view, and we know we're covering
Yeah.
all companies and all bases. Because when we were going to manias back in the day, I mean, those were long ass days. We'd start off usually at Access and then go to
Mm-hmm.
Mania, and it's 5, 6, 7 hours. And then, the post wrap. Now that they've split Mania up into a couple of days, it's more palatable. But as you said, and I was watching, like I said, via social media, the All In event, and I'm like, man, when is this show going to end? Because when you had messaged me and said you're leaving and you're going to stop watching, not to send any spoilers, I was like, holy cow, this is still going on. And the picture you sent was the women's match, so I knew there was at least a couple more matches to go. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what is your ideal pay-per-view length?
This is probably just conditioning, but I would say around 3 hours,
Mhm.
because that's what they always were when we were
Yeah.
younger men. Um, I think back to WrestleMania 4, which was the first 4 hour pay per view, which came on two VHS tapes. I don't kids today can't even
Right.
fathom. Um, and to me, and that could have just been the format of WrestleMania 4, but it felt like a very long pay per view.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess it depends also on where you are, who you're watching with. Me sitting at home yesterday by myself watching a 6 hour show didn't feel that bad, but it also, I mean, obviously it was. My butt was a little numb after a few hours, and I was like, man, I really should get up out of this chair more often. But if like I'd gone to Dave and Buster's, or back in the day, you and I would go to Buffalo Wild Wings, not a sponsor. None of these companies are. They should be. Um, and even sitting there for 3 hours during a show, I felt at times was a little long, because you'd have your meal and then you still have like 2 hours to go. So I couldn't imagine if I was at Dave and Buster's yesterday trying to, you know, get 6 hours worth of service,
Right.
and you know. So, but what if I went to a movie theater and watched it for 6 hours? That might, if you have a good crowd that's into it, and
You're
obviously being
sitting there
there.
in the arena or the stadium.
I was going to say, yeah, if you're in the arena, at least you're amongst fans that are there, hopefully having a good time too. And so, um, but yeah, I think 3 hours is about a good time to, unless you're going to put on a Jelly Roll concert in the middle of the show, and so you can get up and walk around. And that's not a diss on Jelly Roll fan, but I'm just saying, like, giving you something to break up the time with.
So, with it, and we've talked about it before, and the reaction that I saw online was that All In is kind of AEW WrestleMania. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I mean, I don't watch enough to know if that's really the case or not. I'm just
Yeah.
going off what other commenters were saying. Is it was this show particularly longer because they were trying to get Tony Khan was trying to get everyone a spot on the show? Because we've talked about that before with not everybody needs to be part of
Yeah.
WrestleMania. They've moved the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, for example, to SmackDown now.
Mm-hmm.
Was this a case of just trying to get everybody a spot, or are the matches themselves too long? Because you talked about WrestleMania 4, and if you go back and look at those matches, because it was the tournament,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, I mean, we probably had, I don't know off the top of my head, 14, 15, 16 matches. A lot of those were probably 3 minutes or less at WrestleMania 4. Uh,
Yeah.
I think a lot of wrestling, I think AEW fans in particular are not being tribalistic, but I
Mm-hmm.
think in the mind of some of those fans, the longer they're out there, the better the match. And sometimes that is the case. But like I said, give me a 10 to 15-minute match and I'm good. I don't need um, all the gaga and all the
Yeah.
extra.
Yeah. Well, to I guess be sarcastic and attack your tribalism. When was the last Triple H match that didn't go 30 minutes? You
That's what I
know?
mean. And I'm
Yeah.
not, yeah, I'm not, and that wasn't a jab at AEW. I'm just talking
No,
in
I
general.
know. I'm with you. I think for some reason, longer equals better in a lot of wrestling fans' eyes.
Mm-hmm. That's what she said.
Uh, but as far as the show as all in for this year, I don't think the only match that I felt was too long was the men's casino battle royal, which, if you don't know the concept, it's kind of like a Royal Rumble, but instead of eliminations, it's first pinfall or submission wins. So the story that they had built up was it was going to start off with MJF and Mark Briscoe. MJF said, "I'm going to beat you so quickly that the third entrant, isn't even going to make it to the ring." And for some reason, they went, and there's no set time limit in between intervals. It's all
Oh,
random.
oh,
So I think they had eventually like 15 or 16 guys come out.
oh, wow.
And again, there's no elimination, so they're all fighting, but usually there are only like two or three guys in the ring at one time, and everyone else is on the outside not doing anything. And with the lack of surprise, if you're going to do that and you bring in, like in the women's match, I think they had like three new debuts and maybe a return. I'm trying to remember. But the men's match, only Juice Robinson returned after being out for 9, 10 months. And everybody else was, guys that are regularly on the card. To me, that felt like, let's get everybody on the show. And I think that it did kind of drag the show down a bit because it was so long. But overall, I mean, the rest of the matches I can't. I mean, the main event I can say went too long just because of the violence and all the sports entertainment that went on with it.
Okay, since you're there, let's talk about that. And we're going to just kind of bounce around. We don't have a set format for this.
Yeah.
Like I said, I saw the clips and it did feel, and I don't know what order because things were popping up on my feed. So, we've talked about it before, and I think you kind of agree with me on this, but I don't know for sure. To me, the broken glass, the forks, the barbed wire, I don't like any of it. I don't like it in WWE. I don't like it in AEW. I don't like it in TNA.
Mm-hmm.
Independent wrestling, I get that wrestling is like a buffet. There's a little bit of something for everyone. The excessive gaga is not for me at all. So when I
Mm-hmm.
saw Page puncturing Mox's head with a fork, I just immediately scrolled on because it's not for me, and
Hmm.
I'm not condemning or condoning
Yeah.
from either perspective, but I saw then like Daniel Bryan made his or Bryan Danielson made his return. Um, I'm wondering if he's going to wrestle again because he kind of teased that retirement thing too, and that's the other thing I guess we can talk about in a minute too is over teasing retirements and then they come back and
Hmm.
wrestle again. But anyway, what was your opinion of all of the extra? Because with Daniel or Bryan Danielson and Darby Allin, and it
Hmm.
felt kind of like WrestleMania 40, where The Rock
Yeah.
and Undertaker and John Cena and everybody kind of comes out and makes their cameo appearance. Well,
Yeah. Okay, I'll take that part first and then get to the violence. I expected all these returns because you have the Death Riders, Moxie's group. You figure they're going to interfere at some point.
is
It's
Pac a Death Rider?
he is, but he's injured, I
He's
think,
still hurt. Okay.
or he can't get into the country because uh, reasons. So I expect, and I was expecting kind of a uh, WrestleMania 40 or 40, yeah, 40, um, or yes, I'm trying to think if 41 had a lot of Gaga, but no, that was just some rapper
Just
slowly
Travis
walking to the
Scott.
ring, which uh, we can tie that into Copeland's return, but um,
Yes.
no, I expected a lot of interference. To me, I wish that they would have known that going, that was the expectation going in. Because I think a lot of fans, from what I've seen online, expected it. Again, you have the Death Riders, they're feuding with all these other, the Ops, Samoa Joe's team. And I thought it was smart on the first match that they laid Joe out after the 6-man tag and been like, oh, we got to take him out. So he's not going to be here to potentially help at the end. And I know you're trying to build up, you have to build up to a moment and get the emotional reaction. But considering that the Death Riders drove Moxley to the ring or to the ramp area in a giant truck and they were out there because it's a no DQ match, why didn't the Death Riders attack at the beginning of the match and then you do your Gaga at the beginning, get that all taken care of, and then come in, in the match just on a solid one-on-one encounter. Um, Again, to me, that's what I would have preferred. Not that I think anything was bad with the way they did it. Danielson returning was kind of a minor surprise. Darby had a video that they played, which didn't make a whole lot of sense, I think, in context, because I couldn't tell if he was still on the mountain or if he was in a plane skydiving. I expected him to skydive through the top of the arena, which would have been cool, but I don't think the roof was open, so probably wouldn't have been that cool if he just splattered on the top of the stadium.
No, that wouldn't have been cool.
Yeah. So then he repels from, again, a very high point, which, given the history of repelling in wrestling, not something that I really want to see because I don't want that risk either.
Do
But
you
it
think,
also,
let me
yeah,
cut you there. Do
yeah.
you think that's our generation thing? Like there's a whole group of
Oh,
fans
yeah.
watching now that have no idea who Owen Hart probably, other than mentioning him in the Owen
Mhm.
Invitational, but they never elaborate on his untimely death.
Yeah.
Do you think that's just Gen X or our generation of kind of because I cringed when anytime I see it, not just again
Yeah.
with AEW.
Yeah. I would say for the most part, yes. I think even fans that were not fans when Owen, his untimely death, I don't know if they'll have the same reaction or the same visceral reaction to it as we do. But but yeah. Anyway, so the interference expected. Don't feel it. And the one good thing I'll say about at AEW when they do the interference is it usually doesn't lead to the end of a match. Like usually the interference happens, stuff they get ran off, the match continues. Which then you're like, well, why have the interference if it's not going to really matter? Um, the violence, though, I mean, it's Moxley. You know he's going to bleed. You know, again, read his book, Mox on Mox by Fox on and Eating Loxes. It's he for some reason got into deathmatch, enjoys it. Again, teach their own. Um, I was just surprised when Paige took the fork the first time and was stabbing him in the head.
Yeah.
Like to me, I've always thought, okay, if you're going to stab someone in the head, you hold the fork so that the tines aren't protruding from your hand, and you're hitting them basically with your fist, and then the guy might bleed, afterwards.
Right.
But I think Mox had him in a figure four, and he just started stabbing him in the head. And as soon as he would bring his hand back, droplets of blood would form. So you knew like he was actually
Yes.
stabbing him. And so that was a bit much. The barbed wire, I don't really care about. Glass, I don't know if it was real glass or not. It didn't seem to be as they didn't seem to be as cut up as they have in other matches. When they brought out the bed of nails, that was a bit too much. Where I'm like, what is the point of this? Like,
When I saw the nails, I just immediately, I don't even know
yeah,
what happened. Now. And I guess I'm a puss,
yeah,
but yeah, I'm like, no,
yeah.
I'm not.
And I know there's, I mean, allegedly because the bed of nails is a mystique thing or
Yeah,
magician thing, and supposedly it's the way they are laid out, and you can lay on them without being, stabbed. But and I would assume maybe they weren't sharp because when I think Mox got backdropped onto them, he didn't get impaled, and it wasn't like when Copeland swung his nail board and lodged it into Moxley's back,
yeah.
and it was hanging there. Mox got up off the bed of nails pretty easily, and it didn't look that bad. But again, yeah, the violence. You know, I was there when Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland had their staple gun feud, and Page drank Swerve's blood. And I was like, oh, that's gross, but it didn't seem too much. Earlier this year or last year, Swerve had a syringe needle, hypodermic needle stuck through his cheek. You're like, okay, that's a bit much. But this one, yeah, I think the violence did get a little, and again, I mean, for the story they were telling, it made sense, but it's not something that I would need to see, for another year
Yeah.
at least.
Do you think Brian is back to wrestle?
I don't, not on a permanent basis. I think his coming back was just a,
Kind of like Undertaker,
yeah, kind of, it was a revenge thing.
because he was a Death Rider at one point, right?
Yes, yeah, and they turned on him when Moxley won last year and put the plastic bag over his head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. That's right.
so
That's what I thought.
yeah,
Couple other things that I noticed, and then you
yeah,
can weigh in on whatever else you think we need to talk about. But you said you alluded to it earlier with Cope's return.
mm-hmm.
I think we're both thinking the same thing. How in both or in all companies, and Kevin Nash actually addressed this on his podcast last week. Someone's music automatically stops any nefarious act that's about to happen.
Yeah. Well, so on that point, I will say during the main event, the Moxley paying event that we were just talking about, all the run-ins didn't have music. Like
Yeah.
Will Ospreay came in with the Death Riders, Danielson, um, Darby. None of them played their music, so it came off, I think, better than if the music hits and then you're expecting like because I don't know when the crowd realized Ospreay was out there fighting. Like probably only the people in that section realized at first, and then when they started cheering, then the other people are probably like, "Oh, what's going on?" So,
Do you think that hurts the pop though? Because that's everybody goes back, now on TikTok
yeah,
or whatever social media. It's the greatest pops in
yeah.
2025, and that
I
music
mean,
hits. You hear that Undertaker gong,
mhm.
and people go bananas. Do you think that
Yeah.
hurts or helps it though?
I think it hurts the pop, but I don't think the pop is the point of a run-in. It's. I mean, I guess with Cope, yes, the return was the pop. But if you're in a match itself, interfering. I don't think you. I always find it weird when you say like, oh, the guy's coming to do a run and he stops by the audio booth and be like, hey, cue up my music. It, I think there's the realism aspect to it that not having the music play adds in. The the thing about Copeland's return though is much like Penta last week at um, well, the Saudi Arabia show, Night of Champions,
Uh-huh.
and Jeff Hardy when he made his debut in AEW is person's getting beat down, music hits, guy comes out and does their full entrance
Right.
before going to. And it's like, are you there to help them or to get the pop? If
Right.
you are, so um, yeah, I don't know. I think the Cope return was always inevitable. It was
Right.
just when it was going to happen. I think it's going to be interesting to see if they can turn Christian, and I'm sure they can easily because the fans want to see Edge and Christian reunited. But uh, it'll be interesting to see how they get there, and how they do Edge and Christian versus FTR right away. Do they do Edge and Christian versus Nick Wayne and I would say not Chris Sabian. Can't think of his name. Sabian, the guy that has been with the patriarchy but doesn't do anything. Um, yeah. So, see.
Yeah, I kind of figured it would be inevitable. Now,
Yeah.
was Cope coming back from the broken leg, or was he injured again?
No, I think he just got written off in storyline. I think the leg had healed. He'd come back, and then they did the FTR turn on him and wrote
Okay,
him
yeah,
off.
that's right.
So,
There was a six-man tag or a
yeah.
trio. Um, yeah, because I've read Cope and a handful of others who've been
Mm,
around for a long time have kind of hinted at retirement, like legit
mm,
retirement. And I think Cope's our age, so I couldn't imagine doing that for as many years as they've done it
mm.
and not catching up with them. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting
Speaking,
to see. I always
yeah.
loved Christian and Edge as a tag team, so
18.
I'll be interested to see this seemingly final ride for maybe even Hope.
Yeah. So, this has nothing to do with the conversation that we're having, but it was something that I saw last week that shocked me. Ultramantis Black, who I wish was in AEW, I think he and Excalibur at least would make an awesome masked commentary team. Uh, 50 years old. I did not realize he was our age. I thought he was, at least a good half decade younger, but he puts both you and I to shame with how good of shape he is in for his age.
Yeah, absolutely. A
Yeah.
couple of other things that I wanted to pick your brain about
Mhm.
Mercedes Monet and Tony Storm. I read the you know predictions online, and everyone was going with Monet in this match. I actually thought, just based on the little bit that I have seen, I
Mhm.
was going for Tony Storm. I think that she's probably, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but just as a casual observer of AEW, I gotta say she's, in my opinion, more of the face of the company than anyone else. I can't, when I think of AEW, she's one of the first
Mhm.
wrestlers that comes to mind when beyond Tony Khan. I just feel like she has adapted and has, kind of risen to the occasion, for lack of a better word, as being kind of that
Yeah.
face.
No, I would agree with you. I think a lot of people expected her to lose based on the fact that Mercedes Monet hasn't lost since coming into AEW. She's doing the belt collector gimmick where she has titles from all different promotions. There's the rumor that she has creative control, a la Hulk Hogan,
Right.
um, which again, I would hope Tony Khan wouldn't be that stupid to give her that much power. I have no problem with wrestlers having some creative input into their character, into what they're doing, but to be like, that doesn't work for me, brother. Hopefully, we're beyond that stage in wrestling. And it seems like, from what a lot of reports that come out of the backstage of AEW, is it's not like that. Allegedly, like in the last pay per view where it was Osprey versus Hangman Page to see who would face Mox, both of them were angling for the other person to win. Uh, anyway, so that's why I think a lot of people were expecting Mercedes to win. It was a surprise. I think it was the right call, and I'm with you. I I think Tony Storm is probably the breakout star of the decade right now, just because to create this entire whole new character the storyline that she had with Mariah May to really get the character over. And yeah, I mean, she gets probably one of the biggest pops. When her music hits, that pop is there. So,
Can't wait
and
to,
what's that?
I said I can't wait for her to come back to the E.
Yeah. And I disagree with, I don't know if it was, I think it was Bully Ray, no, or Conan. It was Conan who said Luther doesn't add anything to Tony Storm. I disagree. I think, he's not there to be involved in the match, a la like a Don Callis or the 28 members of the Bloodline and the Death Riders. He's just there to be kind of the stooge. And so he
Kind of like
plays it perfectly.
Ralphus back in the
Yeah,
day.
exactly.
Was Jericho on this show?
No, Jericho's not been around for 3 or 4 months at least.
Oh wow. Okay.
He's been on
Um,
tour, and I saw Fozzy just released a new song. So
okay.
grab your earplugs.
I was gonna say something else about that women's match and I
Oh,
forgot.
well, I don't know if you saw it on your clip, but you and I were at WrestleMania 22 when Mickey
Oh
James.
yeah, I called that. Yeah, the Hungry Beaver.
Yeah, I think Mickey James's crotch grab and hand lick has been replaced by the Hungry Beaver, as you say.
Yeah, that was a I saw it and I'm like, wait a minute, and then I watched it again and I'm like, okay, that is what I saw. Oh
I
boy,
know. How many times did you rewind and watch? Five, six.
just just once. Um, but yeah, I think that and not to dovetail into evolution, but I do think
Yeah.
that Tony Storm has been part of that women's revolution of sorts, if you will, that
Mm.
uh, continues to make women's wrestling more meaningful and better. And I think that whether Mercedes Moné, I guess none of her championships won, so
No.
she didn't lose anything as a result of this. And to me, it's been good storytelling, and I don't know how much of an
Mm.
influence Tony Storm has on her own character and the development. Allegedly that a lot of the AEW stars do have more creative freedom in what they do. But I would say that is definitely in the 6 years or so that AEW's been around. That's been one of the highlights over the time of it is Tony Storm's character, and then like you mentioned earlier, the feud with Mariah May was outstanding as well. So, what about Okada and Kenny Omega?
Omega.
Now, this was to unify two belts, and they're calling this the AEW Championship. Is that right?
They're calling it, I think, the Unified Championship, but it will still be defended individually. And then on certain Tuesdays during solar eclipse, they can have another match. I don't. I've seen stuff I don't fully understand because part of it is the title that comes with winning the Continental Classic
Uh-huh.
each year, which they're still going to do. But I I don't know. I mean, I think AEW has too many titles and needs to consolidate some.
Is this like the WWE Championship and the World Title, like
It would be like
Gunther
the
and John Cena right now?
Intercontinental and US titles if they
Okay, so they're
combine.
not. So this belt is not does not have the cachet that the World
Now,
Champ.
yeah, or I guess to use something from our past and our years of experience, this would be more like the NWA International title that Rick Rude
Okay,
held.
gotcha. Okay.
You know,
Um, I mean, I've seen kind of mixed feelings on that too. Somebody had posted they let AI predict the winners, uh, and then their team of podcasters could also pick winners. It was split. I think that one was split between the two, which I think probably because they've had the rubber match, or they've had. I guess they
mm,
were one. Okada won one, Okada lost one, and then they had a draw or something. So.
yeah,
Um,
I think this was the fifth match. I think they were 2-2
Oh, okay.
against each other, but I
Um,
don't know.
what are your thoughts on Okada? Is he again? I don't know a whole lot about him or Kenny Omega for that matter, but um, I think some were surprised by that result.
Uh, um, yeah, I don't. I mean, I'm not. I haven't seen their matches from Japan. Okada, I wasn't familiar with till he came to AEW, and basically all he does is flip people off and yell bitch. So I didn't have a lot of expectations for the match, and I don't know how serious Kenny's diverticulitis is, but it seemed the match was a lot slower paced than I would expect, which I think made for a good balance with the rest of the show. But I don't know if it was what fans were expecting. It was fine. It just, again, not being a huge fan or not knowledgeable of those guys' histories, I wasn't expecting much. Whereas other fans that were probably expected a lot, and so it was fine. It was a good palate cleanser after the Hungry Beaver.
The Osprey and Swerve Strickland against Young Bucks. Osprey and Strickland, is that kind of a makeshift tag team, or have they
Yeah,
worked together before? Okay.
yeah.
What about JoJo Opperman, the widow of Bray
Mm.
Wyatt? I know she sang Swerve into the ring. Um, what's the connective tissue there? Are they dating? Was there a relationship there in the past, or what's going on?
No,
Do you know?
I think one, she's a singer, and they needed a song, and so that gets you a job. And apparently, the song she sang, which I can't think of what it was, I think it was a Jackson 5 song, was the song Swerve used to use on the Independence.
Yeah.
Um, to me, because I didn't know that, and because he didn't come out while she was singing, like she sang, and then his theme kicked in, and then he came out. And so it was just to me, it was very disconnected. Um, I think she was there probably because fans know who she is, and um, or I know WWE apparently is taking care of whatever contract Bray had has been, I think, transferred over to her for residuals and royalties. But it could just be I don't know if Swerve and her do have a history. I'm not sure they know each other, at least from their NXT days. Um, so I think she was just there as a, I don't know. She was there.
I've seen people say, well, there were fireflies up on the screen. Was that for JoJo, or are they trying? Like, what do you?
I did not see that,
Okay.
but I mean, I'm sure once JoJo came out, because I mean, I texted you like, holy shit, the Fiend is all elite because I was
Yeah.
being a smartass.
Right.
So I'm sure once other fans saw her, like the connection to Bray probably kicked in, and so that was their way of showing respect or knowledge. Um, I don't. I mean, because didn't she leave WWE to kind of focus on her singing career?
I, I thought maybe
Or is
she
that
left after she had
Ricochet's what
the
girlfriend?
kids, but I don't.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
So
Samantha Irvin left to focus
maybe
singing, but
okay.
I don't.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't expect her to be on AEW going forward, but I also don't know anything about what's going on behind the scenes in AEW. So I can
Well,
leave it
what
to their own.
speaking of behind the scenes, was the Bucks EVP title,
Mm.
for lack of a better word, on the line in this match?
Yeah, yeah. It was EVP title versus Swerve, and Osprey couldn't challenge for the world title for a year if they lost.
Mm.
Which to me, that would have. I was surprised the Bucks lost because
Right.
I think taking Swerve and Osprey out of the title picture for a year could have been more interesting, and especially since Osprey made the stipulation without Swerve's approval. Like you could have, spun them off into a little small feud and then build up to one of them getting a title shot next year at All In for the first, being their first chance at the title. But I do agree also that the Bucks losing the EVP at least gets us out of a corrupted authority figure storyline, which is way overplayed. So,
And speaking of that, like, and again, I'm asking because I don't watch
mm,
regularly enough to know. I'm not throwing shade, but there was never really any payoff from the attack on Tony Khan with them, was there? When they pile drove him or melted drive
yeah,
him, whatever the name of the move is.
um, I don't think anything major. I'm just more, loose storylines would be when the Death Riders first started and the Bucks were shown in the back, like destroying a lot of paperwork and then leaving for 3, 4 months. Nothing's ever come of that. So
Okay. Is
maybe,
there
maybe
anything
that's where
else?
the Epstein list went to.
Anything else on All In that you wanted to weigh in on?
Uh, yeah, real quick, I've mentioned several times on this show, I am not a big Adam Cole fan. Unfortunately, I still don't know what it looks like. It might be a concussion protocol, and he's had concussion issues in the past. Even though I am not a fan, I don't like seeing anybody get injured and having their career end because of that. So, um, while I will not be disappointed, I'm not going to come on and be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to see Adam Cole." Now, if I never see another Adam Cole match, I've still seen too many Adam Cole matches. But I do wish him, we want to send out the best to the. Um, Hopefully, it's nothing serious, and I'm pretty sure even if his career is over, he'll have some job in AEW
Sure.
some way. So
He's relatively young still too, isn't he?
younger than us, so yes.
Yeah. So yeah, there's so many things. We've seen it with so many other talents before
Yeah.
that, depending on who they are, they can manage or announce or just kind of be that goodwill ambassador. So they're still involved. So, and that's where people uh, where I don't understand the tribalism because
Hmm.
look at all the people who are employed in AEW right now. And if
Yeah.
Tony Khan and his you know vision and financial backing didn't exist, you would have dozens of very talented, skilled professional wrestlers who are either toiling on the indie scene and not being seen or
Hmm.
out of a job. And so that's where I don't understand why people get so tribalistic. And I know we go back and forth kind of online or, via our, you know, messengers, uh,
Hmm.
kind of joking about it. But I just think, guys like Bobby Lashley and Swerve and uh, or Tony String, where would they be right now without AEW? So
Hmm.
I'm glad that there is that alternative and that they are getting a piece of that spotlight of people. So
Yeah.
that being
Yeah.
said, let's switch gears to WWE Saturday Night's main event. Again, I talk about it every time we talk about Saturday Night's main event. I get the whole feels with the open and the music, and I know it's not as the same as it was when we were kids watching it, but it's still uh, hits me in a way that I'm like, man, this is good. And I was wondering how much WCW centric the show would be if they would
Hmm.
lean into that. They did not as much as I thought they might incorporate, but it was good to see Diamond Dallas Page, the Steiners, and probably the biggest surprise of the night for me, Ernest the Cat Miller and
Hmm.
Doug Dillinger.
Have I? I'm sure I've told you my Doug Dellinger story.
I think you have, and I think we both have Doug Dillinger stories. So
Oh yeah, yeah. You,
what
yeah.
was what was
Mine,
yours?
mine was at Great American Bash '97.
Mhm.
Yeah, in Moline, Illinois. We had front row seats. And I say front row because we were on the right side of the rampway, but the row extended all the way to the back of the section on the hard camera side. So our seats were looking not at the ring, but at the people watching the action. And then there's the space in between in between the sections, and people would come down from the bleachers and stand there during the show, and the security didn't do anything. And so after the second match, we saw very little of the actual show because horrible seats. Um, anyway, we had taken a sign that said Moline is Dillinger country. And before the show started, David Pinzer's like, let's see your signs, which I think they did just to confiscate signs.
There you go.
So like we just told our sign up at the very beginning of the show, and then it was on like a sheet and it wasn't a poster board. So we wadded it up, put it under the chair. Because we had at Starcade 96, we had one called same thing, said Eric Bischoff Fan Club, which we held up at the beginning of the show and then put it in our seats, never held it up again. And security came and like, we need your sign. Like, we don't have a sign. And they left. So the sign into the first match, some security guy comes over, is like, "I need your sign." I'm like, I don't know, we played stupid. And then
Right.
all of a sudden, Doug Dillinger comes over. He's like, "I need that sign," and I'm like, "Why?" Like, I think he was just impressed to have a sign for himself, and it's probably still hanging up in his den at home. And then a year later, at a Thunder taping in Peoria, after the show, we went out to eat at Perkins, also not a sponsor of the show, and I don't even know if they're still around. Um, and Doug Dillinger and a couple other guys came in and to eat, and my cousin went over and talked to him and brought it up, and he played ignorant, like he didn't remember it. But again, I think it's still at his house.
Why do you think they took it though? There was nothing derogatory.
Yeah, I don't know.
Either sign, the Bischoff one.
It, yeah, I don't know if it was something they didn't want promotion of non NWO. That probably Hogan may have saw the sign and said that doesn't work for me, brother,
Yeah.
and they took it. So although Hogan wasn't even on the show, so but
Well, my Dillinger story was about 6 months after your incident in
mhm,
Moline. We were in Huntsville, Alabama. I worked at a TV station. We got uh, the chance to go and talk to some of the wrestlers, including Goldberg.
mhm,
Um, and this was Goldberg's streak was going, but he wasn't. He hadn't won the U.S. title or anything like that yet. But anyway, um, in between the interviews, because all the other TV stations were there too, we went up and shot some B-roll of them setting up the ring, video of them getting the ring together. And Dillinger came over and just chewed us out and said, "Who told you to do that?" And nobody. We just thought, we're getting video for our story. They took the tape and erased the video that we had gotten of them in the ring up. And I, I'm speculating, and maybe now that years later, having done
mhm,
that kind of behind the scenes stuff, I know that people are sensitive to. Yeah, we all know it's a work, but we don't necessarily want to see how all the sausage is made.
right.
That was also the night the Giant destroyed the ring that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were in. So we don't know if they were doing something different to it, and that's why he got triggered, or if he was, that was just a natural. And we didn't ask, and in hindsight, we should have. But when I saw him pop up last night, or on Saturday night, I chuckled and
Mhm,
thought of that story and thought, oh, it was. I mean, I was if you would have given if 100 guesses of who they were going to bring in from WCW,
mhm.
Doug Dillinger would not have been in that list of 100. So I thought it was a cool.
Yeah.
Again, I love the nostalgia, so it felt right. And then even having him go back and knock at the door and all that, to me, that was the one, not the one thing, but that was
Mhm,
something that the attention to detail that WWE paid that I thought was a nice homage to Goldberg on his way out.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, when they were walking to the ring, I was like, "Is that Ernest Miller?"
Yeah.
Is like, I was like, and then yeah, what? And I didn't recognize the other guys that were with him, but I read if it was who they are. They're people I know the names of, but I don't think they
Oh,
had
okay.
a connection to WCW. I think it's more like training buddies or
Oh, that makes
something.
well, and
But
I think Ernest Miller still works for NXT. Who's part of
mm,
the uh, Performance
trainers.
Center. I think he was. I don't know if he still
Mm.
is, but um,
You think he called
so
his mama and said, "Mom, watch TV. I want to be on."
won't be on TV. Um, you know, I thought, okay, so and again, we're not going to go through all of Saturday Night's main event. I would say that I was surprised, but not surprised. And it wasn't until the last probably 5 minutes of the main event that I realized that Jesse Ventura has not been on to do commentary. They had him on at the very beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. I didn't see him at all again. And I don't know if that was a product of the last Saturday night's main event where he pretty much shit all over the main event or
Mm-hmm.
the cage match and kind of, you know, dissed Damian Priest and everybody else involved. So, uh, what's your take? You think that Jesse kind of overstayed his welcome on the desk, and now he's just going to be there to kind of introduce the show?
Hopefully. Yeah, I fast forward through the opening Scott Stanford, or not Scott Stanford, Joe Testatori and Jesse Ventura, because again, I don't need to hear Jesse Ventura on TV. I don't. To me, he doesn't add anything other than that nostalgic.
It's all, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when he wasn't, I did notice he wasn't on commentary for the main event, and I think it was much better because of it. Um, So I don't know. We'll see going forward. I don't, again, don't know what type of contract they have. Don't know anything about what's going on, but I think him not being on commentary probably is the right call, unless he's going to actually start watching the show and
Right.
realizing it's not 1986.
Yeah. Well, and I had said to myself, and then I actually put it out on Twitter, so I did put it out there in the universe. Uh, the second Seth Rollins lost the match to LA Knight, I'm like, he's cashing in tonight. Goldberg's going to win, and then Seth Rollins is going to cash in.
Hmm.
And I tweeted that, and then I sat there and I thought about it because I'm not 100% convinced that the knee injury is legit. What's your take on it?
I was watching it after midnight, so I wasn't paying full attention. I
Yeah.
didn't even see the injury happen when it did. I just cut the replay, and I didn't see anything on the replay that made me like, because they said, "Oh, his knee buckled," but I didn't see anything out of the ordinary.
Right, right.
Um, and so my thought too was, as the main event was going on, and again, watching it later, I could see how much time was left in the fight, in the show, which I thought was way too much time for a Goldberg match. So I'm like, okay, something's going to happen. Seth is going to come out either after the match or even, after the ref bump, which I think every wrestling company should be fined $1 million anytime there's a ref bump. Um,
Yeah.
then I thought Seth was going to come in and cash in while Robinson was down and while Gunther was down as well, but did not have, which I don't think it would have been the right call if you're trying to give Goldberg his moment. Um,
That's as I sat there and
you know,
articulated my thoughts after I said that, I'm like, well, that would be pretty shitty if you have Goldberg win and then Seth cashes in and then you know what I mean? So I'm like,
well, I did
okay,
see Bret Hart said, please cash in this fool's career. But
yeah. So to me then it made sense. And I had no problem with Goldberg tapping out to Sleeper.
mhm,
To me, I don't know that it has given Gunther any more legitimacy in my view,
no.
my personal fandom view, because as we talked about last week, Goldberg is not anywhere near my top 50 wrestlers, probably my top 150 wrestlers, quite honestly. He's just
Is he
never been.
above or below El Dandy?
You don't desecrate the good name of good or
Who are you to
of
doubt El Dandy?
um so and that's not a dig or a diss at him. He's just someone that I never resonated or connected with as a fan, even through all the years, and I know there were a lot of people that liked him and but think still to this day very highly of him. And I think we're going to see his son eventually in the ring. And I don't think we've seen the last of Goldberg wrestling wise, yes, but I think that he'll still be around. But I'm saying all that to say, uh, I'm glad that he got to do his thing, and again, I went to social media and I posted my
Mm.
initial thoughts on the show, and I still feel I don't remember what it is, 16 hours later or whatever it is. I still feel the same. I wish they would have had, because you're on NBC, you are really on a tighter timeline, I think, when
Mm.
you're on broadcast uh, versus Netflix. You could have continued speaking. I wish they wouldn't have cut him off. They did cut him off at a nice spot, but you knew watching he wasn't done talking.
And I could be wrong because once the match was over, I did kind of I don't think they on the replay his speech is there. I think it goes straight to black and then like a promo for
Yeah.
Evolution or something.
Yeah, so it in again, I'm on TikTok. So, an hour later, a fan who was there actually posted the whole thing. And it probably went another 90 seconds, if even.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know again, they're dealing with networks and it's not, you and I
Yeah.
know how live TV works from our years in it as
Mm-hmm.
well. So you can't just start doing things like that and making more time,
Yeah.
at least on network. Again, had it been on USA, they might have been able to fudge a little time like they used to do with the overruns back in the day. I don't know if they
Mm-hmm.
still do that with SmackDown or not, or with AEW shows on TNT and TBS. But anyway, I'm saying all that to say, even though I'm not a big Goldberg fan, I do wish more of that moment could have been encapsulated because he was a big deal. in that attitude era, and kind of changed. I don't know that he changed, but he was definitely in the right place at the right time. But again, I think it takes something from the person too. It was the opportunity, and it was met with
Yeah.
his ability to make that work. So again, I wish he would have just had a few extra minutes to say his piece, but luckily we were able to see it via some fan cam footage.
Yeah, I did not see that. I think I'm good. I don't. I don't need to hear Goldberg unless he's telling me that the Goldbergs is coming back or he's doing a spinoff of the Goldbergs.
There you go. That may be. Okay. Anything else on Saturday Night's Main Event? Because I thought of something else from AEW I want to go back to, and then we'll wrap up this week's episode.
uh, yeah, Saturday Night's Main Event again. You said you don't watch AEW regularly. I I do try to watch WWE, but again, it's just not for me. Like I can appreciate it, but I will stick with AEW as my primary one. So my views of WWE programming is not. I would not listen to me for a review of if a show is great or not. It was fine. I you know the Timu Bloodline 2.7 whatever they're on now. I'm over. I don't need to see it. And I do like the fact that their My Family Tree logo looks just like MJF's logo, same font, which I believe they've done before. Um, but uh, yeah, I don't. They just go. They're brothers. Go back to Rikishi's house, fight in the backyard, fight in front of him, so he can be happy watching them get pushed. Uh, Jelly Roll and Randy Orton versus Drew and Logan Paul. I do like Logan Paul. Apparently on SmackDown came out and said, "I'm tired of all these celebrities coming in and into our industry and trying to take over." I thought that was clever, but and I give Jelly Roll props for his weight loss journey. Could take some lessons there, but are you excited for that match at SummerSlam?
No, but I think again, it's part of that celebrity cachet,
Yeah,
and it's no different. I don't guess than the first WrestleMania. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I'm sure
I
there were
no.
naysayers with Mr. T being there and being a part of it.
Well,
So
yeah, his name was Roddy Piper.
right, but I mean, uh, I wish social media. No, I don't wish that, but it would be interesting if we could take today's technology, jump back to
And see
1985,
what
and
people.
just see,
Yeah.
get a read on how fans were reacting to Mr. T. I personally was fine with it, as an 11-year-old kid or 12-year-old
Mm,
kid seeing uh, an integration of rock and roll, and wrestling coming together and merging. But that's what WWE or WWF was aiming for at that point. It wasn't,
yeah.
uh, you know, I'm not a Jelly Roll fan. I'm not uh, particularly. I do like Logan Paul and his role in WWE. I've come around on Randy Orton. I like Drew McIntyre. I like three of the four principals in this match, so I don't have a problem with it. Um, now if they bring Jelly Roll in to win the world championship, I might have a problem with it. But I think for what it is, or what it is probably going to be, I'm okay with it.
What if Jelly Roll sticks around and they bring in Ludwig Kaiser to be with him and he can be Kaiser Roll?
I would say let's end this show here, but I do want to get your take on, and I can't believe I forgot it. Uh,
Yeah.
Jim Ross, uh,
Hmm.
cancer battle recently. Um, I listened to his last podcast. I felt he sounded healthier and stronger than he sounded in a long time on the podcast. I don't
Hmm.
know. Did he call the last match? I know he came out at some
They
point. Did
call
he?
it, yeah. He was on commentary.
Any thoughts? And I know you. Again, we're talking about Jesse Ventura, and
Yeah.
we know at least Jim Ross is keeping up with the product. But is he? He's around the same age as Jesse, so is he
Hmm.
sounding good? Does he belong still at the desk, or what's your takeaway?
You know, I I didn't notice anything about his commentary. But again, I was watching late at night, and so I had the volume kind of lower just because I don't know how sound travels to the other apartments around me, and I try to be, you know, polite to my neighbors. What I found amusing though was during the main event, they would cut to, with all the violence, they would cut to shots of JR, and uh, he just seemed like the expressions on his face were just like, oh, what am I watching? So I got amusement on that. I did personally, based on his previous performances, what I did hear or pay attention to, I thought sounded fine. Obviously, it's not the JR that is classic JR, which really not a fan of because to me that became too soundbitey
Yeah.
in his calling. But yeah, I mean, again, kind of like Adam Cole, don't wish anything ill will to Jim Ross. Good that he's still out there and wish him the best. But does he need to come out for main events in the future? Yeah, take it or leave it.
All right, there you have it, folks. We want you to leave us a review on whatever app you are listening to or watching along with us on YouTube. And also, don't forget, it is Christmas in July still here for the My 123 Cents Action Figure Drive, Wrestling Figure Drive. So be sure to send in your donations. We have all the information over at facebook.com/My123Cents. Friends, thank you for listening and or watching to this week's episode. We will see you next time.